Jerris, kind of dive into some of the actual kind of real applications that you're starting to see and folks that you talk to. Like, how are people really starting to apply it in a way that's meaningful outside of, just these grand schemes that it's going to do all our title or do all of our land administration?
There's all kinds of accounts that people can get going with it. But the novelty of it wears off pretty quickly. And then it becomes, okay, well, now what do I do with this? And to actually use it effectively takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of trial and error to try and figure out, like, how is this going to be able to best be utilized for me? In terms of real world applications, the field landman, like, everybody wants it to do title or help do title for them. But even that has a lot of complications, because let's say you have a bot that is pretty good at building a run sheet, which most of them at this point can effectively build a run sheet. But if you try to put too much trust in it on actually chaining and doing calculations, you're running into some scary territory at this point. Or
Yeah.
how do you source the documents that's going to go into it so that you can even build the run sheet? And so there's like obstacles that are there. But if you approach it with an open mind and think, hey, it can do, just like you said, Brent, like it can do 95% or 80% or whatever that is, it's going to be able to do a lot of that work to get me started. That's really helpful. So yeah, from the field standpoint, like, I think the title aspect is really promising. Run sheet generation is working really well. Chaining will come along at some point. Mapping is, I think, a puzzle that a lot of people would like to be able to solve. Internally, like with the operators, the land administration piece is working pretty well in terms of being able to run, large volumes of documents through a system and get an analysis that comes out of it, and to a pretty high degree of accuracy. So again, the things that are like reading and writing, those are pretty dominant. Field perspective, title, in-house, land administration, lease processing, et cetera. Those are probably the biggest things that people are using it for today.
Yeah. Can we dive a little bit into that field and abstract side of things? So, over the last 2 years, I guess, since we spoke originally, especially over last year, 2025 was a big year for that. We and myself have been reached out to by half a dozen different companies that have use AI to build these language recognition models to build a run sheet, right? And they're all trying to sell you on the product, and yeah, that product delivers savings, from a time standpoint. There's challenges of how you actually put that in the hands of, hundreds of landmen, thousands of landmen across our profession before you start to see meaningful change. But we always pump the brakes on, subscribing to something or buying something, because we felt pretty confident that in 12 to 18 months time, we'd be able to build it ourselves in a fraction of the time. Have you seen that? Like, when we talk about the progression of these models and people's broader understanding of how to develop these skills in these systems, do you feel like we're reaching a point where, a relatively seasoned user of AI will be able to build that kind of tool themselves, and to be able to build that run sheet module, that tool, and use it within their community, and we're not faced with this, death by subscription
Yeah.
concept, which is a really challenge to implementation across a
Yeah.
grand, scale.
Yeah, no, that's a great question to ask. I was having a conversation with someone not too long ago, and just philosophically, I was saying various companies that have popped up, and not just true like in land, but just across the whole space, but
Hmm.
companies that have popped up that are based solely around AI technology. What is the threat to them when OpenAI releases a new Chat GPT model, or Google releases a new Gemini model that isn't going to instantly replicate it, but like you just explained, is going to make it much easier for those seasoned users to be able to build something for themselves? And I was talking with somebody who has one of these companies,
Yeah.
and he didn't take offense to it, but he did explain it in a great way and brought up the point that, you know, that company has 12 months of advancement on everybody else on trying to build something utilizing the same tools that are out there. Well, when a new model comes out, they're also going to have access to that new model, which is going to allow them to take their product that they have and propel it even further than where it was before. So I think, on one hand, you could argue that perhaps it does level the playing field a little bit, but you also have to understand, are these companies that have already been utilizing today's tools, how is that going to allow them to launch and go even further? Um, the other piece that I think is going to be a huge challenge is the scalability for it. Like an individual user might be able to come up with something. It's a methodology or process with current or future models that allows them to build a run sheet. But is that going to be something that they can replicate multiple times, either to use with a small team or potentially build out and release to a customer base and distribute? So there's some complications that are there. I would say for individual users, the world is really exciting on the horizon for things that they'll be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. That's kind of the big question, right? It's like, when do you jump in? It's a big challenge for us is how do we have resources that we can push out to our teams to, to make them more efficient, um, in a way that's cost prohibitive. Because, you've got, and I certainly have a unique perspective in the business. I'm a broker. I work for clients. We're a service organization, but I'm also providing service to our contractors, giving them opportunities. Like, how do you take that and push it down? But then, how do I cover that expense? Right. And how do I pass that on in a way that makes sense and is clear and open? And I think what you touched on earlier about the tone, the shift, and people's understanding, I think that makes that conversation much easier. It's like, hey, we're using this resource. It's a cost to us, but it's a savings to you in the long run, right? That's the conversation is becoming easier to have with our clients. But I think we're still a little ways off before it could be a universal thing that's really applied across the industry. But
Yeah.
it's certainly exciting the direction that it's heading.
Do your clients have concerns over privacy security things if you tell them you're going to use AI to help in your work?
Yes, different ones have a different level of concern. I think the conflict, if you're really going to run a business and adhere to your service agreements, is that every master service agreement that I've signed with, we build 150, 200 clients a year, right? Every one of them has confidentiality, and every one of them says you have to keep our data confidential, and you have to have cyber insurance, and you have to have all these things. And, so that there are these two competing forces of what I'm obligated to do through my service agreement as the broker, as the whatever, is fighting against, well, now I have a potential cost savings for you that flies in the face of that potentially, right? Because nobody really, well, I say that nobody, the regular user really doesn't understand what happens when you dump an entire run sheet of documents into this platform and have it do X, Y, Z, or you dump a spreadsheet of your leasehold position on a project that you're doing, and you say, hey, help me build a better spreadsheet, or help me, tell me what my net revenue interest would be, and, these 50 tracks, right? Like, where does that go? And how can I ensure as the person, the responsible party, somebody's responsible for things, and ultimately it's the broker. I signed the service agreement. How am I responsible for that data? And how can I tell my client ultimately when it hits the fan a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever, that I did the appropriate things? And the fact is, like, I don't think anybody really knows the best way to handle that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of those things that I have to think about. Now, the everyday layman doesn't have to think about that, and a lot of times the everyday in-house customer, our clients don't have to think about that. They're looking for desired results, and they need answers now, which is the age-old thing. It's why there are companies that do what we do. But it's a thing that I think about, and that gives us a little bit of hesitation, I think. But I feel like 12 months from now, we'll all be that much further along, and it'll be more accepted. And we've got to address that challenge before we can really move forward.